would like to move on now. I would like to talk about truthfulness. In chapter 8 on rule 8, you write about the life lie. Mm-hmm. It's you say someone living a life lie is attempting to manipulate reality with perception. Based on what you write in the chapter, couldn't one say that a large part of the population in the 21st century live a life lie because they avoid conflict, they say what they think pleases their spouses or their bosses instead of telling the truth?
Oh, yes.
They do what is convenient at every given moment instead of saying what they really want.
Yes, well, perhaps not at every given moment, but they certainly fall prey to that temptation. It's conflict avoidance, yeah. Well, as a psychologist, psychologists deal with a variety of problems, but I would say the two most common normal problems are anxiety and depression. That would be one class. And the other would be lack of assertiveness. And lack of assertiveness subsumes the problems that you just described. People won't stand up for themselves and say what they need and want, and then they don't negotiate properly. And they're avoiding conflict in the short term, which is a form of lie by omission. And what that means is that problems aggregate around them. And that's often why people end up divorced. You know, people will stay married for a long time, and one partner will say to the other eventually, well, I've been unhappy for the last 8 years. It's like, well, that might have been something to announce in increments, say weekly or even daily, long before everything accrued to the point where the only possible solution is a catastrophic dissolution. There's a lot of conflict involved in setting a relationship straight. You have to let each other know who you are, and because you're different, that's going to cause conflict. You're going to conflict about whose job takes priority and when. You're going to have conflict about how to spend your free time, about how to raise your children, about how to manage the domestic economy, about what disciplinary strategies you should use, about where to vacation, about what to eat. Like, all of those things have to be negotiated through, and all of that requires truthfulness so that each of you know what the other wants and will be satisfied with, and conflict. It's very, very what would you say? The only thing more exhausting than telling the truth and negotiating with your spouse is not doing it and waiting for the divorce. Both of them are difficult, but I would recommend the former.
Yeah. If we talk about the workplace, what do you want to say to those viewers that regularly, agree with their bosses instead of telling the truth? What are they doing to themselves in the long run?
Well, they're taking the soul out of their work. Let's say, well, just imagine for the sake of argument that you encounter one annoying thing a day at work, a small annoying thing. And then let's say, for the sake of argument, that you could have a little battle about that and improve it somewhat. Or you could just say it doesn't matter. It's like, probably doesn't matter today, or it might not even matter tomorrow, but if you make 1,000 decisions like that, which you will do over 3 years, then now you have 1,000 things bugging you at work. And if you wait for 5 years, then it's 2,000 things. And the same thing happens with your kids, and the same thing happens in your marriage. Those things accrue and they turn into a monster.
Yeah, but you would agree that conflict avoidance is practical sometimes. People do it to just go on with their lives.
No, I don't actually. I think in a marriage, for example, there's almost nothing so small you shouldn't fight about it. But the question is, what does fight mean? It doesn't mean win. Like if you and I have a relationship, let's say it's a business partnership, it doesn't really matter. If we have a relationship and we have a difference of opinion, we need to battle it through. But the purpose of the battle isn't so that your viewpoint prevails or that my viewpoint prevails, because either of us might be wrong. The purpose is to engage in the conflictual exchange of opinion so that we can see a joint path forward to peace. And that's the thing, is like if you're fighting with your wife, the first thing to remember if you're fighting with your wife is you have to live with her. So maybe beating her in the argument is not the right outcome. What the right outcome is saying what you have to say, listening to what she has to say, and see if you guys can come up with a mutually agreed upon solution that will make the problem go away. So,
if we explore conversation between people in society, a lot of these conversations are full of falsehoods and lies. People are nice to people they dislike. They're being fake because they try to be friendly. I mean, is it in fact morally wrong to live your life in that way?
Yes. It is. It is. I mean, you can't avoid the necessary conflict of negotiation towards peace. If you avoid it, all that it means is that it accrues and multiplies. It's the oldest, one of the oldest stories we have. The oldest stories we have point to that as part of the prime moral doctrine. You know, it's a form of impulsivity. You know, if you only do what you want in the moment, impulsively, that there will be consequences of that into the future, which is why you shouldn't act impulsively. Impulsively avoiding conflict is exactly the same. And people, same problem. People know this, you know, if someone's casually rude to you, in a bus driver, for example, and there's always the possibility that you'll stew for hours over what you should have said. It's like when someone transgresses against you, let's say, you have to say what you have to say. You don't have to say it as if you're the totally correct authoritarian tyrant. You can say it in a spirit of inquiry, you know, because there's always the possibility that you're wrong and you want to listen. This is also why you want to listen to your partner, your spouse, even if what they're saying to you is you find very annoying. It's always possible that they're right, and you should listen, because if they're right, then they can stop you from heading for trouble in the future.